Greetings, YouTube. I'm just reading something that got me thinking about a peculiarity of both tabletop and video games, and that is encounters, particularly in tabletop, because tabletop games are being run by people as opposed to AIs or scripts. And they're talking about obscure monsters. And he's like, what's the least, what are the ones that just don't get used very often kind of thing? And the person made a very cogent point is that if you have a low level creature, like one hit dice or less, in an unusual environment, by the time the player characters find themselves exploring the unusual environments, not temperate or urbans or something like that, they are at a level where they don't really encounter things that are one hit dice and less. Why? Why don't you? Doesn't that seem to break immersion? Think about it for a second. You, the person watching this, are a pretty big mammal. You're a good-sized mammal. If you go into the forest, you're going to be bugged by all kinds of things that can't hurt you, but they can annoy the heck out of you. You're going to be bothered by insects. You can be bothered by birds, for example. You get too near certain birds' nests, they're going to start dive bombing you. Now, can they kill you? No. Can they even hurt you? Possibly. If they peck you in the scalp, they might be able to make you bleed. But they're not going to hurt you a great deal. And if you actually were to hit one, if you could hit one, you're very likely either going to seriously injure it or kill it. But you're still going to encounter it. Why don't we do that? Isn't that part of immersion? Now you're going to say, well, it slows things down. And yes, it would. But slogging through, for example, a jungle is slow going. And the things that can drive someone mad are the environmental aspects, the heat, the humidity, the access to questionable water or foods that they're not used to, or lack of food, and the unrelenting environment around them of noise and smells and insects and things like this. And they're constant. There have been cases where like swarms of mosquitoes have killed moose calves from blood loss. Hence why swarms can be so darn dangerous. But that kind of thing, an individual mosquito, other than the fact that it can carry a disease that can kill you, in itself isn't that annoying. But what if you're being hit by 5 and 6 of them every minute? Again and again and again and again and again. And it never, ever stops. There's never a moment where you are not being assaulted by some kind of creepy, crawly thing. If you're moving, probably flying things. But at night, when you're resting, and the crawling stuff comes out, some may just see you as an object to move over. They're not interested in you, but they're still crawling all over your body. That kind of thing can drive someone mad. But we don't do that much. It's like when a group of 10th level characters walk into a jungle, it's like all the low hit dice creatures to part ways and get out of the way as they walk in. But should they? Or should they be encountering these low-level things? Yes, defeating them in moments, getting next to no experience points from the process. They're literally swatting away half-hit dice creatures. But that, I mean, I'm not saying you should do this every time, but if you want to create an oppressive environment, that may be a way to do it. And there's also there's always the swarm, which can take lower level creatures, which again by themselves and twos and threes may not be a problem in the least, but now when there's 30 of them, that is a problem. But it is interesting. I've also seen in video games where if someone activates a particular location at a low level and then they don't explore it and they go off and they do their thing and they come back again, that location that had been activated by them when they were second level is still set at a second level encounter scale. Whereas when they're walking in there to actually do the exploration, they're 30th level. Which means nothing can harm them. They're just book, they're batting things out of the way without even blinking at them. Of course, the rewards are also not going to be as great, except for the quest item, which is going to be in there. So we don't do that in games either, because again, we're tabletops, we're dynamic, we can change things like that. But also remember, if a bunch of villagers are living near a site and they're absolute commoners, so which means you're talking about a community of, we'll say, of 200 people, and they're ranging from, on average, between 1 to 2 hit dice as the bulk of the community, and you got a couple of 3s and maybe a handful of 4s and maybe 1 or 2 fifth level characters in that community. Okay, so it's not a tough community. It's just an average community out in somewhere on the outskirts of civilization. The encounter that challenges the 10th level party, why haven't they wiped that community out? They're so much more powerful. Even if that community comes together, if those creatures that are a challenge for a 10th level party are smart, they could take that whole community out over the course of a month. So why don't they? And we do this all the time, and I don't know if we ever really recognize that we're doing it, that we're putting this thing next to this thing where they should be interacting, but they're not. Because if they did, they would seriously change the entire dynamic of the adventure structure, and change the world at large. If we start applying that kind of logic to it, then things really do fall apart. Like, why don't beginning superheroes bump into more powerful enemies? Like you see a character like the Punisher, and the things that challenge him are not going to be a challenge to Luke Cage or to Thor at all. So if like Harvey Fisk, is it Harvey Fisk or Fisk? I know his last name's Fisk, Kingpin. I can't remember his first name. Is it Harvey? I don't remember. But Fisk is a great threat for Daredevil or for the Punisher, but he's, in realistic terms, no threat whatsoever physically for Luke Cage or Spider-Man. Now, there are all power dynamics, that's one thing. But when it comes to fisticuffs, there's absolutely no way that Fisk can stand up to either Spider-Man or Luke Cage. It's just not possible. Either of them can punch him once and kill him. But we just accept the fact that heroes and villains of this tier interact like this, and heroes of this tier interact with heroes from this tier, enemies of this tier, and enemies of this tier interact with heroes. This stratification, we just accept it as being part and parcel of comic books and role-playing games and video games. And yet if you apply any kind of thinking to it at all, it all kinds of falls apart. So maybe we should be throwing low-level encounters at the party. Now, again, not every single time it would get tedious. But if you want to emphasize that the world is filled with things that exist that are going about their everyday business, irrespective of the existence of these more powerful player characters, And these things don't know they're more powerful. You know, those low-level creatures have no way to know that the party that's about to enter their biome can kill all of them with like a mere whim. They're still going to treat them like the same thing they would treat any other creature of that size. Is it something I run away from? Is it something I go to see to get, do I attack it? Do I follow in its wake to maybe take advantage of whatever kills it makes? The animals have lots of different strategies. But those strategies, and monsters which should as well, those strategies should still apply because those creatures don't know what's entering their biome. So the environment, to give immersion, should be reacting to the characters as though they are just what they appear. A bunch of humanoids of unknown power. Animals and low-level monsters that aren't sapient aren't thinking about that. They're just reacting to the thing that they normally encounter of that size and that nature. Like when Brock Samson goes up against a minion, that minion doesn't necessarily know who Brock Samson is until he encounters him. And then the minion is dead. So, have you ever done that level of immersion before? I'm just curious. Interestingly, this video is following up right after the previous one I did, and I'm still working on something for a video I haven't got around to. Blame my ADHD.